Done it. I clicked it. So I think we're live.
Well, hello everybody. I think Joe's just frozen for a moment.
It's a little bit of a change for us to say good morning rather than in better light.
I think Joe's free. Good morning, everybody. Thanks everyone for coming in. Is she back? Have we got Joe back?
Joe, are you okay?
Am I there?
Seem to be. You're freezing. You're coming in and out.
I think so. I should be. Nothing's open apart from this. There.
We seem to be losing Joe. She seems to be freezing. Thanks very much for coming in, everybody. As you see, we're having a wee bit of a hitch to start off with, but we hope we will sort it out very, very soon. So we're joined today by Karen Perkins. Thanks for coming in, Karen.
Hi, thank you.
And
hi,
of course, Thomas Board from the Pendle blog. Morning, Thomas. Hope you're feeling better, buddy.
Morning, everyone.
Morning, Thomas.
I think Joe's back with us. Yes, she's moving, so she's back with us.
Hopefully. Is that better?
Yeah.
We can hear you. Yeah.
Okay.
There we go. Carry on, Joe. It's all yours. Morning, Sam and Gate.
Okay, so just going back to, I'm not sure where we were, so I'm going to start briefly from the beginning again. Good. Is he still talking? No? Okay. So good morning, everybody. It makes a little bit of a change for us to say good morning here in Paranormal. Good evening. As you can see, we're trying to expand our live chat. Decided that we're going to do one a little bit like, I suppose we could call us in a way with the loose women, are we? I suppose, in a way, excusing the boys. As something that's going to focus a little bit more on the morning.
Speak for yourself, Joe.
So this morning's chat is going to be. I always do. So this morning's chat is going to be a little bit about touch on the life and what people must have gone through during the times of 1612 and the infamous Pendle witch trials. We're going to be focusing on the Demdike or the Southerns, or they have kind of three names that went by Demdike, Southern, device forming one family in one place. So let's look at the hierarchy of the family. Let's look right at the very top. So living together in one house, which was known as Malkin Tower. As grand as it sounds, it really wasn't grand. It was a shackle, it was a hovel. It was not a nice place to live. And I'm pretty sure there wasn't even glass in the windows of the small windows that they had. So old Demdike, the grandmother, she was known as Elizabeth Southerns. 80 years old, almost completely blind in both eyes, and so poor she owned one set of clothing. This wasn't uncommon in that time. She then had a daughter called Elizabeth Device, known in the village Winting Lizzie, one eye that looked up and one eye looked down, a large hunch on her back. She was a real dream of a woman. She had 3 children. She had Alison, around 15 years old. She had James, probably around the same age. And then she had little Jeanette. She features quite prominent in the second part of the story. Now, that's who they were. That's where they lived. Karen, would you like to tell us any more elaborate in the story, or what you think the characters might have been like?
Yes, I think they were quite a notorious family in the area. After 3 generations, there was only one male in the family of James, who is quite often described as slow or dim-witted and rather more insulting names as well. So we're quite unusual in that the two matriarchs and then the three younger ones, and they've made quite a name for themselves. As you say, they were very poor. They lived with one dress. They couldn't get changed. They really would have lived off the land and off their neighbours as well, with begging. So they'd have been regarded as a bit of a nuisance. But there's also a lot of information about how they would cure. They'd be called in to cure a sick cow, but then also had the power, knowing the cures of the plants and the areas that they lived. They also had the knowledge of what would harm. So they could also demand money by menaces as well when the need arose. So I think they lived on a very fine balance to make their way.
Absolutely.
And to live their lives.
So just on the point, I mean, we talk about there being one male in the family, which obviously was the son James.
Yes.
There must have been a father around at some point. Now, I believe that he passed away due to bewitching from another family, very, very important to this story.
Yes.
Over was making payments of oatmeal to this other family the year he didn't like confesses to his 15-year-old daughter that this other family were making these only to keep them safe.
Yes, there's Demdike's biggest rival, Chattocks, who just lived, I don't think, very far away. And they were both lived very similar lives, really. And Chattocks had two daughters that I know of, Anne Redfern, who also features within the Pendle Witch story, and also Bessie, who had, and I think she was like a bit of a bruiser, I think, in modern vernacular. So I think she was quite known as quite a violent woman. She would break in and rob her neighbours, and she allegedly broke into Malkin Tower, stole clothing and other items, and was then seen wearing them.
She did.
Which didn't go down very well, and a lot of fuss, and it ended up that John Devis, who was the father of Alison and James and Elizabeth Devis's husband, who he then would pay a yearly amount of oatmeal just to keep the family safe. So it was oatmeal by menaces, really, a bit of extortion between the two families.
Yeah. Okay.
And the 1 year that he didn't pay the oatmeal,
so let's go back.
Died.
Right. So let's go back to old Demdike. Let's go back to the grandmother Elizabeth Southerns herself. Now, we know from Thomas Potts's account that she was roughly into her 80s. So let's say, for argument's sake, she was mid-80s. Lots of things that are reported, so the mumblings, the ramblings on, that she would have said, it could have possibly been a touch of dementia, Alzheimer's. From what we know now, for a lady to be in her mid-80s, this wouldn't be uncommon and absolutely nothing to be ashamed of whatsoever. But do you think,
of course not,
science mixed with paranormal could have caused this? You know, could there be a reasonable to her that she saw a black dog, to her thinking she was coming back from begging through the to which she recalls to be the devil, to have just been in this poor old lady's head?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, the story goes that she was walking back from begging past a stone quarry and came upon a boy, or a devil in the shape of the boy, who wore a black and brown coat. And of course, it could just have been a boy that she met along the road, but he purported to be a devil and said if she sold him her soul, then she could have anything she wanted. And she demanded his name. The name was Tib, and apparently this devil in the shape of a boy or a dog would come and visit regularly through the years, but she never did much damage with him.
Yeah.
And again, the story goes that the pact was really sealed about 6 years after first meeting him, when she was sitting asleep with a young child on her lap. So whether that's Alison or James, we don't know. So presumably been woken up in the night, half asleep, and then this dog came and sucked from a place on her body. So it could just have been a nightmare, but of course it fits in very, very nicely with the demonology. So that really sealed her fate. So from then on, she was a witch, and this devil dog would do her bidding.
That's such a shame.
So just on old Demdike, Shelley.
Yeah.
Is there anything, you know, because I know that you guys are Scotland and we're England. Is there anything you would like to know about Demdike? Can we ask any of your burning questions? Is there anything you think, well, what if, or maybe she wasn't? Anything?
I mean, Demdike was reportedly to be a cunning woman. So I feel as though it really was unfortunate that if it wasn't for the fact with Alison meeting the John Law, she probably would have got on and got let away with doing what she was doing for long enough anyway. So I'm just quite intrigued to know, I mean, how it just came about, like it came from Alison Device meeting the peddler. Obviously, she had actually, she felt really, really guilty. She really was convinced that it was her curses that brought him to his knees and caused him to collapse. And for her, and Demdike as well, I've been reading so much about this. Was it Demdike that actually accused her daughter, or was it her daughter that accused Demdike? Was it?
Yes.
I'm trying to think. It was her daughter that confused.
Alison then accused her grandmother.
Yeah. I just get mixed up there. Sorry, you caught me out of the blue there, Joe, because I'm too busy trying to work the.
Do you know what? That's the thing. That's not at all. That's the thing about this story. I mean, and I know that I've mentioned to Tom, and Tom's mentioned to me, obviously, the Pendle Witch blog, that this is the tale wade through so much rubbish to find the tiniest. Yeah. And there's so many different variations of the tale. So, you know, please don't apologise, you know, for being confused, because it's massively confusing. Hence the reason why we're here this morning doing what we're doing. So now moving on then, so that we know old Demdike had a daughter. So she had the daughter Elizabeth Device, or nicknamed Squinting Lizzie, but let's call her Elizabeth Device. Let's give the lady some credit. Now we know anything about her apart from she was disfigured. She had 3 children. I mean, Tom, could you help me out here? Was she ever married?
She was, yes. She was. Well, we know that in 1590 she bore the surname Ingham, so that could mean 2 things really. Either she was previously married, or she may have been illegitimate. Or it could also mean Elizabeth Southern. Well, it's quite hard to get into really on such a short amount of time.
Yeah,
you'd really have to.
But she was married at one point.
She married John Devis in 1590 at New Church.
Okay. And he would be the father to, from what I'm led to believe, just Alison, not Jeanette's.
He was actually, with regards to there being...
would you agree?
He was also the father of Henry Devis, who was baptised in 1595. He died in 1599 in infancy. He was previously unknown.
Oh, so there was another Device.
There was, yeah.
Right, okay. That's quite interesting. So amongst all this, there was the death of what would have been a very young baby, if not a boy.
Yeah, he died at 4 years old. So.
Oh,
what I think I was
natural causes, ladies and gentlemen. We're thinking.
Paul
Oh, we
Flewitt.
have a question. Spread were accusations of witchcraft trials in the north of England at this. So I'm just Paul's question: how widespread were accusations of witchcraft and trials in the north of England at this time? I'm guessing, Paul, by that you mean 1612, because if they were around this time, I think I would have definitely been burned at stake.
I think there were a few.
I personally.
Because there was one that some of Roger Nell's relatives were involved with, the Shuttleworth. I think I've got the right name. A few years beforehand, and then at the same time as the Pendle Witches, there was also the Salisbury Witches, where another group of women were accused. There was also more were brought in at the time of the Pendle Witches. Isabel Roby was brought in from Whitton, and Margaret Pearson as well was also there. So there were a few, and then further widespread, there was the odd one in York as well. So they were around,
and I think
they did pop up, but it was the Pendle ones that really blew up.
Yeah.
I think as well it was a case of we were in such a margin of history and the future being so uncertain for England at that time that the mention of witchcraft, you could do away with, for example, the wife had been sleeping with the miller. You could accuse your own wife of witchcraft and that'd be done with it. Something silly. You could have a row over, your dinner being cold. You can pop to church on a Sunday and just mention that, the missus indoors served you a cold, pigeon pie. That in itself, it was so easy to be accused of something that was just a misconception. So then going back to the children.
Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, there we go. So yeah, we were right. Well done. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
So, Jo, I was going to ask
around the same time as well. I think it was a lady in York, but I can't remember the name. And she was on a cart coming back from the market. She told one of her neighbours who put a flagon of milk on top of a sack of oats, "Oh, don't put that there, it'll fall off," which is a normal, just cautionary thing. So it fell off, and the woman was accused of witchcraft, that she'd put the spell on to make the milk fall off. So it was very, very, you say, Jo, very, very easy to accuse people. So Demdike and her family, they had no chance really in that kind of atmosphere and the superstition. And it was also a very difficult time to live with droughts. They were in with very bad harvests, a lot of rain. They were in a mini ice age. There was a lot of upheaval in the land as well. And so when things go wrong, as we've seen in this past year and last year, we want someone to blame. And that I don't think that's changed in human nature.
Shelley, sorry, did you have a question? Did
it was just what I was trying to explain earlier on about Elizabeth Device. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. So, do you think that Elizabeth Device did try to defend her own children against the claims of witchcraft? Because it is stated that there was no evidence to say she actually did try to protect her children, that she just went on to blame her mother, that she had the mark of the devil, which then sent her mum. Is that correct, what I'm saying?
Well, on that note, I mean, let's talk about what happens at Melkin Tower on the Good Friday meeting. She's just, Squinting Lizzie has just watched her mother and her eldest daughter be carted off to Lancaster. what be upset by it? Do you think did she want to kind of, that kind of thing? In a way, hold the Good Friday meeting to try and rescue them. This is one of the theories. So if we go with that theory, then yes, she did everything that she could without incriminating herself further. Maybe knowing that she had two other children that needed her at home. If she was to go and plead, their innocence and they didn't do it, she could easily, in her temper, which we know that she had from Tom Potts's account, when she's wailing and she's screaming at her daughter to shut up, get out, you don't know what you're saying.
Yep.
In the trial, what slip off her tongue? And she incarcerated herself.
Yeah.
So I think as much as she wanted to defend her children, she had to be so careful, so careful that the slightest thing would have, it did, sadly, but the slightest thing could have easily been misinterpreted and she would have ended up inside as well.
Yeah.
So let's talk about...
I'll give one wee question. I know this life expectancy back then was roughly about 30 years old, something like that. Wasn't very high. Obviously, Demdike was 85. How much do you think her age played a part in her being accused? Because I think back then, if you seem to live beyond 30, 35, some people considered that you had actually been, the devil was helping you live a longer life. Do you think her age played a major part in the accusations against her?
It would certainly be a mark against her in the minds of her neighbours.
Yeah, especially even if you were a little, action was better as a young, as a 20-year-old, it was looked upon as perhaps in some sort of witchcraft. If a girl was lucky enough to be very attractive, then she was made to be attracted to the devil that taken that form to bewitch people. They put anything down, absolutely anything down to the to it possibly being witchcraft. So we talk about Alison Device, and we know that cold spring day she met the peddler John Law. Now, from what I've researched, Alison was quite fiery. She was very similar to her mother. She had a little bit of a temper. Maybe a little bit like Chattox's daughter, Betty. She wasn't afraid to stand up for what she wanted, and she damn sure wasn't ever going to back down. Did she meet the peddler and, as Simon Entwistle gives us a moral account, please, sir, a few pins, sir? Or was she blatantly rude? Personality, Karen, what do you think Alison's thinking about what she grew up with, the way that she lived? Must have been absolutely starving every day of her life.
Yeah. She's a very interesting character because she would have, again, as you say, starving every day of her life, only one set of clothes. She lived by begging, by foraging, and yes, by extortion as well. So she would have lived off the reputation of her mother and her grandmother. And let's not forget, Demdike means demon woman. That's the translation. So she would have had a front with her. So I'm sure she would have been very much in John Law's face, demanding what she wanted, angry and just spewing words when she didn't get what she wanted.
Yeah.
But then we have the other side of her nature, because when John Law actually did fall down lame when he had a stroke, she was beside herself. She begged forgiveness. Yeah. She went to the inn to beg forgiveness. She begged forgiveness again in the court, despite the seriousness of it. So she wasn't hard as nails. She had a front, yes, but beneath that, she felt she had a good heart, I think. So which makes it even more poignant, the story.
Yeah. So, Tom, just a quick question for you. There's a lot of talk on how old Alison actually was. in some of the research I've done, all the clues are kind of pointing she was around 15. Would you agree with this?
No, because we have a baptism record. She was baptized in 1593. So she would be either 18 or 19 at the time of the trials.
Oh, okay. Okay. So James would James have then, was he her younger brother? I'm taking it. So he would have maybe been around about 16, I'm guessing.
James was baptized in 1590, the same year that Elizabeth and John were married. So you could almost interpret that as a shotgun wedding.
Oh, right. Okay.
But it's not only spellings that are into.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah,
interesting.
Oh, okay, you're back.
Okay. So we've got Alison Device as 19. Let's have a little talk about old James. Now he comes quite drawn into the story without a shadow of a doubt as being sent off to steal a sheep for the Good Friday meal. 1612. Stealing a sheep was a hanging offence in itself. So before even any of this comes into account for witchcraft, if Roger Knowles had got a wind or a draft that a sheep had been stolen, especially by these poor people of Malkin Tower, the young lad would have been sentenced to his death anyway. How old, Tom, would you make of James? Would you make him older or younger than Alison?
He was definitely older because he was baptized in 1590. So
okay,
he's definitely older.
Yeah. Okay. And from the only factual account that we can kind of rely on, as some of it may seem, would be when he appeared in court. He was beshevelled. He was drooling. He was a shell of a boy or a man.
Mm-hmm.
Do we think that he could have maybe been? I mean, let's again look at science and history together. Do we think that he was maybe suffering from some kind of learning difficulty? Because we know that Squinting Lizzie, Elizabeth, was born with this birth defect. Maybe that could have somehow filtered through and come out as maybe an autistic trait from him. Would you agree, Karen?
I think it's very possible, yes. It says quite a lot that somebody of his age wasn't the head of the household. So that suggests to me, especially at that time, that he did have some kind of learning difficulty. He wasn't able to step up in the way he would have been expected to in those times, which again would be further fuel to the fire, if you like. And the description of him in Potts when he came into the court was quite interesting as well. As I say, he was a wicked and miserable wretch. He could neither speak, hear, or stand by himself. So it suggests possibly torture, but also Thomas Potts suggests that he may have harmed himself while in jail. Or then would that be a way of putting the blame for the state he was in off the jailer Thomas Cavell and the magistrates and onto the victim, as it were. So I think there is a good case. I think, just going back to the first part of that, I think the fact that he is not the head of the family does speak to some kind of deficiency in the words of 1612. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then finally we talk about, I say the final but of the family. Obviously she wasn't the final member, because today we've just out that the 4-year-old little boy also part of their family. Maybe that was the boy that old Demdike met. Maybe it was him. Maybe she was seeing him in her head. Maybe she met him the year that this little boy had passed away. It could have been anything, so many things. But let's move on and little star witness, little device. Yeah. Now, she was, wrong, Tom, roughly around the age of 9. Left to her own devices, pretty much. Device by name, left to her own devices by nature. She would please herself. She would have to take care of herself. It was just the way it was. Again, just like the grandmother, or her sister, her brother, and her mother, wearing one garment to her name. This child, nothing but starvation and poverty, and living in absolutely conditions. What kind of effect would that have happened, or would that have had on a 9-year-old girl? I know that she mentions when she talks to Roger Knowles that she saw her mother and her grandmother riding off on winged horses. She says that, she's overheard conversations, brother chanting charms or prayers. We have to remember that she is a 9-year-old girl. Her imagination is out of control. So how much of her imagination was twisted and warped into this story to capture and condemn her entire family? What can you tell us about Jeanette Cameron?
I think you said it all, really. I agree. Yes, she was the youngest. She was also illegitimate, so because John Device had died by the time she was conceived. So she was and there isn't much mention of her father, Sellers, at all. So yes, again, left to her own devices, leading her grandmother around the countryside to go begging. So listening to old Demdike stories, as we all do to our grandmothers, taking them as fact, I'm sure, taking them as real. The imagination of a child, and it's that's I know. When I was that age and have a creative mind anyway, I sometimes found it difficult to tell fact from fiction and what had really happened and what I dreamt. Still do sometimes, to be fair. So yes, I can see it all coming.
But that's why you're award winning. That's why that is.
Thank you. And I'm sure Roger Knoll would have seen that as a great opportunity, and obviously he did, and he managed her very well.
So, Shelley, do you have any,
Yeah, well, you can just see, like, Jeanette Device, she would just have been a younger version of her big sister, really. Alison had lived through it all, and you can see she was hardened to it all, but Jeanette was still that bit young and naive and easy to manipulate. And I just feel as though, obviously, as you have already said, that her imagination would be running wild. And at that early age, nothing, you can't comprehend everything anyway. So she would have been easily led to say that this happened, that happened. I do think it's interesting that Janet there was a precedent then set. More people in the future, more children, were able to stand trial against witchcraft at that age, because I'm sure that was a big thing that I did read, that lots more children after that trial, because there was a lot more children able to then go and give evidence, hence the reason why a lot of the children in the Salem witch trials can I step back from Janet? That small young girl that had all going on about her living that life with her family and seeing all these different things going on.
Absolutely, yeah. So, Tom, I know that Karen has mentioned the surname Sellers into being entwined into, well, the family tree. Can you tell us anything about him? Was there any kind of relationship? Did she have any contact with him? When did he die? Anything about Jeanette's father as to might make her different? Because from what I've researched, Jeanette was incredibly clever. She was incredibly clever. Whether this was all inputted to her while she was in the care of Mr. Knoll could be another thing, but she was said that she was able to pick up like that quite easily, unlike her brother and her sister. Could you shed any more light on that one?
Well, on Stella specifically, there is a very interesting burial record at Newchurch from 1635 for Jeanette Seller alias Devis, and I would say on balance, it's almost certainly Jeanette Devis from 1612. But this, I'm cautious of going off on a tangent here, because, as you know, we have to go quite deep into the implications this has for the second trials, because it's commonly held that the Jeanette from trial in 1634 is the same Jeanette from 1612. This is a big problem, because we know from the Farrington papers, it was a calendar of prisoners published by the Cheatham Society, that Jeanette Devis of 1634 was imprisoned until 1636. So they're mutually exclusive. They can't possibly be the same person if we assume that the burial record at Newchurch is correct.
No.
And am I okay to continue with this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Go for it.
I'd just like to make the point that there is a legitimate explanation for the mystery of the two Jeanettes, as in there are two sources that have come down to us to explain what could be going on here. One is the manuscript published in Whitaker's Worley. It's a copy of the Edmund Robinson's testimony, and in that he refers to Jeanette on trial in 1634 as the wife of William Davis. It actually says Jeanette Davis, William Davis Uxor, which is Latin for wife. And the second piece of evidence is the Londesborough manuscript, which belonged to an antiquarian called Albert Denison, and in that one, his contemporary actually says that it said Jeanette Davis, Uxor, Wilhelmie Davis. So there we have two sources explaining what could have happened here, how the two Jeanettes have been confused. One is Jeanette Davis of 1612, and one is the wife of a man called William Davis. So
The surname, yeah, and the pronunciation, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to know that device is. I don't want to be pedantic or anything, but it's device is technically wrong. It's
no, not at all. Not at all.
It's the surname Davis spelled phonetically, you know.
Oh.
And that's why.
Absolutely. Yeah. There we go. So not only have we discovered a 4-year-old.
Love that.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've spoken as to what we can only explain to be very briefly, but I like to think that we've been able to give you a better picture on the way of life and what would have been going on in their minds, inside and outside, within the breadth of that brooding hill all those years ago. Now, we do know that poverty played a huge part to the people of Pendle, not just the witches, but to everybody in itself. We do know that there was no state benefits, there was no help, there was no salvation. And to look to sometimes the biggest places to be accused of being a witch would have been the church. So leaving the devices not so much behind, pausing in their sad tale to what would have been daily life within the walls of Malkin Tower, we're going to touch again on them in our part 2 and understand what exactly our account on that frightful spring morning in March, when she did come across the peddler and she did do her begging, or did she demand the pins? So our part 2 goes from them being carted off from the beautiful surroundings of Pendle Hill to be locked up in what can only be described as a stone monster, not too far from where they lived. So I would like to say a huge thank you once again to Karen. Amazing. And anybody that hasn't read any, please do so. Please do so. Yeah. I think if we just pause for a minute, I'm sure she can give us a quick flash of a cover.
I can't actually. I've not got them next to me for long. Books everywhere. Oh gosh.
And even I'm doing the same now, because I've usually got one to hand and mine are too far out of reach. Also, a massive thank you to Tom from our Pendle Witch blog. At the minute, Tom, I think your blog is down for a bit of construction, isn't it? But we can follow you on Facebook as the Pendle Witch blog.
That's correct, yeah.
Perfect. So thank you very much again, my lovely. And obviously, these guys, Scott, who came to my aid because I'm a bit rubbish with technology this morning, and Shelley. She's. I suppose we can call you our Pendle Witch Virgin, can't we? We're converting you to the way of witchcraft. So yeah, very sacrificial, doesn't it? So yeah. So thank you very much, guys, and look out for our next one. I think we're talking about our next one is it Tuesday, Karen? Karen's the brains behind this one.
Yes. So it'll be on Tuesday, which is the 23rd, at 10:30 again, and we'll be talking about Chattox and her family. So Chattox and Anne Redfern. So the Demdike main protagonist, her big rival. Yes.
Perfect.
Fantastic. Looking forward to that.
Thank you very much, everybody. And yeah, if you are watching and you haven't liked up.
Sorry, Joe. No, I was
if you are watching and you haven't liked our page, please make sure that
you go first, Joe. On you go.
Is that what you were going to say?
No, you carry on.
So if you there we go. Start again. Is it take 5? So if you are watching and you haven't liked our page or Karen's book or follow Tom, please make sure that you do. Every day we're putting new stuff up, whether it be pictures, competitions, stories, experiences, all different things like that. So it's definitely worth a like and a share. And over to Scott.
Thank you, Joe. So I just want to say thanks very much again to Karen and Thomas for giving up their time this morning for coming in. We really do appreciate it, and you will be seeing more of them. Thanks to Joe for semi-hosting today's live. I wasn't planning to be here, but unfortunately I had to put my coffee down and run in, but it's all good. And Shelley as well, thanks for coming in, Dog. We do appreciate every one of these, and we hope you are going to enjoy the Pendle series that we're going to be running.
Yeah.
We're back on tonight with Paul from Paranormal Analysis. He's coming in. We don't have any topic tonight. It's just that he's coming in to say hello and a general catch up. But I'm sure you all know Paul. He's been on a couple of times. So thanks very much, everybody. We really do appreciate coming back to end the live. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon, folks.
Take care. Bye-bye.